Welcome back. So moving forward in this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to use various join operations in MySQL. So we currently have the ClayDesk DB, and one of the tables that we've been working on so far is the university students with the following columns that you can see right here: ID, first name, last name, email, and phone number. So what I'm going to do is, of course, create a new table with some new columns, and then I'm going to demonstrate the join operation so you get to understand fully how they actually work. So I'm going to go ahead and first jump right in, and basically we are going to create a table called courses. Okay, so let's go ahead and use, and this is, by the way, comments, and I may have talked about this earlier, but this is simply create the courses column. And comments are helpful because you can actually take a look at these and then add as you write the code. So sometimes your code that you're writing is longer, so this is for best practice. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and do a create table. And by the way, you've already done this, so this will be good practice as you move along. I'm going to go ahead and say courses, open the parentheses, and I've done this in the previous lesson, so by this time you should be comfortable in creating new tables. So I'm going to give a course ID, and this would be an integer. Specify this as primary key, and then I'm going to use it auto increment. Okay, so the next would be, for example, let's put a comma here because you need that. There we go. And then once we have the course ID, then we have the course name, and that would be a varchar. Let's do 100, and this will be not null, which simply means that this field is required. Put a comma because we need a new line. Then we need the instructor name, and again we're creating the courses, so this is also varchar. Let's do 100 in this case, and this is also mandatory. That means it's not null. And then we have the start date. This will be the course start date, of course, and this will be simply a date. We have, let's do another one, duration in terms of weeks for a particular course, and just leave it as an integer. And let's do one or a couple more. Let's just do one more. Let's do fee, course fee, right? And this would be a decimal. And of course, I'm going to specify this as, say, 10, and then up to 2 decimal places. Okay. All right, great. So this would be creating the courses table. So I'm going to call it courses. And what this does is simply creates a new table within the same DB. So let's refresh the schema. Once you do that, you notice that there is a new table called courses. And of course, under this table, you'll have all of the columns that you just specified here. Perfect. Now let's enter some data also, right? Because it's easier when we get to our join operation. So I'm going to quickly enter a data into this for this particular table called courses. So let's go ahead and do a comment first. So I'm going to insert 5 rows into the courses table. Great. And this is just a comment. So anything that starts with a 2- or sometimes a number sign, and you can specify this in preference, by the way, by going to edit preference, and I'll show you that later, or you can take a look at that yourself as well. It's pretty straightforward. Once you enter the comment, I'm going to go ahead and do the insert into, use that keyword, courses, and of course specify the course name, the instructor name, and all these are the same columns: the start date, the duration in terms of weeks that we have, and then the fee. Close the parentheses and then specify the values. And the values here are going to be, for example, I can say, and this will be the first course, because since we have the course name, instructor name, start date, duration, weeks, and fee, so in the same order, I'll specify enter data. So I'll say introduction to programming, or I can say introduction to MySQL 8. How about that? That's a good course name. And then I'm going to say the instructor name, which will be, say, Dr. Syed, comma, and then specify the start date for the course, right? So this could be, say, 2024-09-01, okay? Could be any date. So it depends on how you want to use, okay? and then put a comma, and then the duration for in terms of the weeks, right? So how long is this course, whether it's a 4-week course, whether it's an 8-week course. So it just depends. So I'm going to say 8 weeks. And notice I'm not using the quotations here because this is a decimal, right? That's the field type, or integer rather, right? Duration is rather integer and fee is decimal. So I'm just going to leave it as 8. And then the fee for this course is, let's say, $299.99. And then close the parentheses. Put a comma. Similarly, I'm going to go ahead and enter, let's say, 3 or 4 more rows. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly enter this, skip this because this is just redundant and you can enter it yourself as well. So I'm going to go ahead and enter all of these so you could see. All right, great. So I've entered 5 rows or 5 different courses, and I'm going to go ahead and execute. And this is going to insert into the courses table all of these rows, right? So the data is now within our table called courses with the following columns that you see. All right, let's dive into the join operations and how they work. So basically, MySQL joins are used with select statement. It is used to retrieve data from multiple tables. It is performed whenever you need to fetch records from 2 or more tables, and various kinds of joins that I'll also take a look at once we move forward. All right, let's do, for example, the inner join. That'll be the first example. And what inner join does, it returns the rows where there's a match between, say, university students, that's the name of the table, and the table courses. So let's go ahead and let me demonstrate. So let's do a select, for example, and us.id, comma, us.firstname. And you're probably wondering what this us means, right? It's basically an alias, and I'll show you that in the next line when I write the code, because university students, in short, or as an alias, is basically US, and I can specify any alias that I like, and I'll show you that as well as we move forward. And there are many benefits of using aliases because it's easier to recognize, it's easier to work with, especially when you're working with join statements. So let's do us.firstname, and then us.lastname, comma, and then I'm going to do c.coursename. And yes, you've probably already guessed because C is the courses table. And I'm just doing a simple inner join, right? So this is c.instructor name. And now I'm going to say from university students US. Perfect. This is exactly where you would actually use the alias. So now I've specified, all right, university students, but call it US. You can call it anything, okay? And here's the inner join. Courses, C as an alias, on us.id. Because now I'm only matching, right? It's going to return the rows where there's a match between ID and equals c.course ID, semicolon. Makes sense, right? Perfect. Straightforward. So that's simply an inner join. Let's go ahead and execute this particular query, and perfect. So it displays in the result grid the ID, the first name, last name, course name, and then the instructor name, where the ID and the course ID are matched. All right, great. So this is an example where it's fetching data from both tables, the courses table as well as the university students table. Let's do the next example, which is the left join. Now, what does a left join do? It simply returns all rows from university students and the matched rows from courses. And if there's no match found, null values are returned for the courses. All right, let's do this example. So I'm going to go ahead and, of course, do select us.id, comma, us.firstname, comma, us.lastname. And I'm just going to use whichever columns that I'm looking to use within this particular operation. So C dot course name and C dot instructor name. Great. Once I have this, I'm going to say from university students, US, which is the alias, and I need to make sure I spell correctly. There we go. And then use the left join. Remember, before we use the inner join, now we're just using the left join from courses C on US ID equals course ID. Great. Let's execute this query. And it says unknown column US first name. Well, I need to have, of course, the dot instead of the underscore. It's all simple syntax. No big deal. Let's execute again. Perfect. So now it's returned the ID, first name, last name, course name, and the instructor name. All right. So if no values are found or no matches found, null values would have been returned for the table called courses. All right. Let's do the right join example. So let's go ahead. It's pretty much the same code. All I'm going to do is, instead of retyping everything, I'm going to leave it as is. Instead of left, I'm going to go ahead and say right. That just saves us some time. So this time it's right join. And what right join does is returns all the rows from the courses table that are matched rows from the university students table. And if no match is found, null values are returned for university students. So likewise, all I've done is simply replace the left to use the keyword right and join courses C on ID and course ID. Let's execute this query. Perfect. It returns the 5 rows that we're looking for. All right, let's do one more, which is the outer join. And the outer join will simply return all rows where there's a match in either university students or courses. And rows without matches in one table will still be included with null values for the missing side, right? So MySQL, by the way, doesn't really support the full outer join directly. So we can achieve this using the union or left or right joins, okay? But let's go ahead and try it out anyways, right? So let's close this part, and we have the select statement all the way up here. So next would be, let's do a left join, because remember it doesn't support the outer, so I'm going to use the union, right? So let's go do union, and then pretty much the union of left and right. So I'm going to copy the above code, and instead of left, I'm going to use right. Great. So everything stays the same. The only 3 aspects I've used or changed is left, and then the union, and then the right. That's all. So I'm going to remove the semicolon here, because now this is all one code, okay? If I had the semicolon here, for example, that means it's going to end the code right here and not execute the other ones. So therefore, now the code seems pretty okay. Let's execute, and let's check our results. Perfect, okay? So now you've taken a look at the inner join, the outer, right, and then the full outer, okay? The inner join, by the way, just to recap quickly, returns only the matching rows. The left join returns all rows from the left table, which is the university students, and matched rows from the right table, which is the courses. That'd be the left join, right? The right join returns all rows from the right table, which is the courses, and matched rows from the left table, which is the university students. It's just the opposite. And then, of course, the full outer join, like I said, MySQL uses the union, right? Returns all rows with matching in either table and filling in null values with no match exists. Great. So I hope this helps. Practice with these join operations. This is a little bit intermediate to advanced, but you get the hang of it. Let me know if you have any questions with this. Let's move to the next lesson.